A man dressed in a suit lying lifeless on an Australian beach. No ID, no fingerprints on record, no signs of struggle. Only a tiny piece of paper hidden in his pocket that said two words: Tamam Shud, Persian for "it is over." Was he a spy? Or a lover? Or a ghost from nowhere? It's an early morning when the body is discovered leaning against the seawall, legs stretched out and feet crossed. He wore a neat suit and polished shoes with a half-smoked cigarette resting on his collar. His pockets held a comb, some matches, chewing gum, a rail ticket to Henley Beach that hadn't been used, and a bus ticket from the city to the coast. There was no wallet, no ID, and every clothing label had been removed. The police tried to match his fingerprints locally but failed. He had not been reported missing under any obvious name, and there were no signs of a fight or struggle. At the hospital, the pathologist reviewed his body and said a rough time of death in the early hours of the same morning. The autopsy described congestion in the organs, an enlarged spleen, irritation in the stomach and upper intestine, and blood mixed with the stomach contents. The last meal was estimated to be a pasty eaten a few hours before death. Given limited knowledge of toxicology at that time, the coroner leaned toward a poison that was difficult to detect, possibly a cardiac glycoside like digitalis. If you're enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more of these coming for you. 6 weeks pass by and the staff at Adelaide railway station turn up a brown suitcase that had been checked into the left luggage office the day before the death. Inside were clothes with their labels cut out, sleepwear, shaving gear, slippers, and a few odd tools, including a cut-down table knife, sharpened scissors, and a screwdriver. There was also a small square of zinc, likely used as a sheath for the sharp edges, a stenciling brush of the type used to mark cargo, and an unusual orange thread card, Barbour brand, that matched repairs seen on the man's trousers. The suitcase did not name him. It did, however, suggest someone who maintained their own clothes, handled tools well, and either traveled or worked around Freet. It also linked the man to the station on November 30th. Police believed he then headed towards Glenelg by bus. Months later, examiners found a small concealed fob pocket sewn inside the man's waistband. Rolled tight inside it was a paper slip with the words Tamam Shud, Persian for "it is over." That is the closing line in many editions of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a widely printed book in Persian in the olden times. Police appealed to the public to help find the specific copy the scrap came from. This was important because fonts and back page layouts vary by edition. A man soon turned in a 1941 white comb and tombs edition of the Rubaiyat, which he claimed had been tossed into his car on Jetty Road around the time of the death. Under ultraviolet light, indentations appeared on the book's back cover, a telephone number, another numeric string, and several short lines of letters that looked like a code. The phone number in the book led police to a young nurse called Jessica Thompson, often called Jo and referred to in notes as Jestin, who lived within a short walk of the beach. She told the police that she didn't know the dead man. She did acknowledge, however, that months earlier, a man had come to her home asking for her by name while she wasn't there. Jessica also had a history with a man named Alf Boxall, a former army driver she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to during the war. So was the dead man Boxall? The police tracked down Boxall alive in Sydney. His copy still had its final page intact, including Jessica's handwritten inscription, so that ruled him out. But the authorities were now left with another mystery. Why did the Somerton copy have Jessica's phone number in it And why was its final page torn out and hidden in the victim's pocket? Those odd lines of letters in the back also drove speculation for decades. Some thought it was a cipher, others thought it was a mnemonic. Intelligence agencies were asked to look as well. Still, nothing definitive came back. The lines were so short that most code-breaking methods struggled without more context. It could be a simple personal aide-mémoire. It could be a private label system. Without the author or a longer sample, it is unsolved. The death occurred just months into the Cold War, and the details seemed tailor-made for a spy story. Polished shoes, no ID, removed clothing labels, cryptic writing, toxicology tests that failed to find a clear poison, and a nurse living nearby with a past connection to a military man. But despite decades of speculation, no evidence of espionage ever surfaced. Since the body remained unidentified after months of coverage, police made a plaster cast of the head and upper torso before burial, preserving the man's features and some hair that would later prove vital. Despite that effort, the case stayed cold through the following decades. In the 1980s, the suitcase and its contents were destroyed as no longer required, a decision that later investigators deeply regretted. In 2021, South Australia approved an exhumation to extract new DNA, and police removed the remains for testing. Simultaneously, a separate research path used hairs recovered from the 1949 plaster bust to build a genetic profile. In July 2022, Professor Derek Abbott and forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick announced they had developed a family tree from the DNA and reached the name: Carl Charles Webb. Born in 1905 in the Melbourne suburb of Footscray, an electrical engineer and an instrument maker. Their work matched DNA to multiple distant cousins on both maternal and paternal lines. Authorities have been working together through a final report that pulls together the DNA, anthropology, and odontology results. Until that lands, Webb remains the leading identification. So who exactly was Charles Webb? Records show he married Dorothy Robertson, became estranged, and left limited traces in later electoral roles. There is no official death record for him under his own name in the years after 1948. Over the years, one story suggested the Somerton Man might have fathered Jessica Thompson's son, Robin. But the 2022 genealogy work does not support that idea. The DNA triangulation that points to Webb also rules out a genetic link to Robin's line. That closes the loop on the most popular paternity theory without answering the more basic mystery of why Jessica's phone number was in the back of the found book. It could mean they never met and the book arrived in Adelaide by some other channel. Or it could mean there was a thin social link, someone who knew someone that never made it into the record. With both Jessica and her husband long deceased, and key witnesses either unnamed or gone, that part may never be resolved. The cleanest explanations remain the most likely. One is deliberate self-poisoning. The man traveled to Adelaide, checked the suitcase, cut labels out to avoid easy ID, carried on with a normal day, ate a simple meal, and ended his life at the beach using a heart to detect poison. The organ congestion and enlarged spleen fit a poisoning pattern that was hard to confirm in 1940s. Another is homicide by poison, staged at the beach, a theory that the coroner considered because the shoes seemed unusually clean for a full day of walking. That would require an unknown person with motive, means, and significant caution, plus no slip-ups that left trace evidence. After all these decades, there is no witness, no confession, and no forensic lead that points to a killer.